Hi, Dr. Schultz and fellow classmates. This week I'm looking at public history with the preservation and restoration of house museums and how important they are in history education. The database we were assigned this week had some wonderful information. I found several articles on a house museum here in Lynchburg, Virginia that belonged to Ann Spencer. And so I wanted to show you her house and the importance of her life and why her home is important. Anne Bethel Spencer was born the daughter of former slaves in Virginia, and she graduated from the Virginia Theological Seminary and College when she was quite young. She was about 17. She became a teacher there in 1901, and that is where she met her husband, Edward Spencer. Anne Spencer was the first female librarian in Lynchburg, Virginia. She was a librarian at the then segregated Dunbar High School. Her husband, Edward Spencer, was the first man of color to be a postman in Lynchburg, Virginia. And Anne Spencer was part of the Harlem Renaissance poetry movement. Anne and Edward Spencer built their house in 1903 as a Queen Anne style house, and it's currently part of the Pier Street Renaissance Historic District in Lynchburg. And it was a typical Queen Anne outside, but inside was a totally different story. The Spencers had a very eclectic design inside of the house. They used color and texture. Edward Spencer was, as he's delivering the mail, finds different architectural pieces on the sidewalks and being thrown away. He would bring them home and they would use them inside the home. Anne Spencer would write her poetry on the walls. As she thought of the poetry or lines of poetry, she would just write them on the walls of the house. And when she died in 1985, the house did not need to be restored in any way. So it's kept in the same exact condition as it was when she passed away in 1985. And when you go to tour it, you can see her handwriting and see the poetry written on the walls. Anne Spencer said of her garden that it was half of her world, but unfortunately her garden did not fare as well as the inside of the house and did need to be restored. And the Hillside Garden Club in Lynchburg took on that task, and they restored it from 1983 to 1985 to what it is today. Anne Spencer was a Harlem Renaissance poet. She was very active in the civil rights movement. She started the NAACP in Lynchburg, and their home was a stop-off for Black travelers going north and south. They hosted many famous people. Adam Clayton Powell, who was a pastor and a representative in Congress from the state of New York. Sterling Brown, who was a poet. Paul Robeson, who was an actor. Langston Hughes, who was a poet and an activist. Thurgood Marshall, who was a Supreme Court justice. And W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a very famous author. Other people that stayed in their home was Mary McLeod Bethune, who was an educator and an activist. Marian Anderson, a singer. George Washington Carver, a scientist. Zora Neale Hurston, an author, and Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. stayed in their home often as he would travel through the area. House museums are important because they preserve cultural heritage, and they do that through intimate stories, their architecture, the culture, the social issues that come up with that. They provide diverse perspectives, and they can address difficult histories in ways that some other museums cannot. House museums provide unique insight to the past. They're a very immersive experience, can be very hands-on, and they connect people to history both socially and culturally. I think the House Museum is a very important part of public history and our history in the United States. Lynchburg has several house museums that are fascinating to see, and I hope you all take advantage of the ones that are near you. Thank you.